This isn't just another draft. This is a full-blown warning siren for half the roster. Jobs are hanging by a thread, reputations are on the line, and one wrong pick could change everything overnight. Because for the Dallas Cowboys, the hot seat is already burning before draft night even begins. Subscribe right now if you live and breathe Cowboys football and don't want to miss what's coming next. Let me ask you something right out of the gate. Are we about to witness a quiet roster shakeup that turns into chaos after the draft? Because if you've been paying attention, you already know this isn't just about adding talent. It's about replacing it. Let's start with the position that feels like it's one move away from complete disruption: cornerback. Two names sitting directly in the line of fire: Darren Bland and Savion Revel. There's been serious noise building, not whispers, not speculation, actual momentum, that Dallas is actively looking at outside corners in this draft. Not just depth pieces, real starters. And here's the problem. You cannot realistically carry a high-paid veteran, a premium draft pick, and another recent investment all competing for the same outside roles long-term. The math doesn't work. And when the math doesn't work, someone gets cut out. Bland is the most fascinating case here. Not long ago, he looked like a breakout defensive cornerstone. In 2023, he was electric, aggressive, instinctive, and playing predominantly on the outside despite the narrative some tried to push about him being a full-time nickel. That's just not accurate. He proved he could survive and thrive on the boundary. But since then, it hasn't been the same. Injuries have derailed his momentum, and the biggest concern isn't even performance, it's durability. That foot issue is not something you casually ignore. When a corner loses even half a step, everything changes. Reaction time, recovery speed, confidence, all of it. And here's where things get uncomfortable. Dallas had an opportunity to restructure his contract. They didn't. That's not random. That's intentional leverage. Because if things don't improve, there's a financial escape route built in. If he's healthy, they could move on and save real money after the season. So now the pressure is crystal clear: return to form, or risk becoming expendable. On the other side, you've got Revel, a player who entered with intrigue and upside but hasn't fully delivered yet. Injuries played a role in his slide during the draft process, and last season didn't exactly silence doubts. In fact, there were stretches where his performance dipped as the year progressed. That raises a difficult question. Was it the system, coaching adjustments, or simply the level of competition catching up to him? A new defensive coordinator changes everything. New schemes, new expectations, new evaluations. And sometimes, that means a player doesn't get a second chance, they get replaced. So between Bland and Revel, one thing is almost guaranteed. If Dallas invests heavily at corner, one of these guys is going to feel it. Now I want you to be honest. Who do you trust more right now, Bland or Revel? Because that answer might not match what the Cowboys are thinking behind closed doors. And it doesn't stop there. Let's talk about the next tier, the players who aren't just on the hot seat, they might already be halfway out the door. Kalen Carson and Tariq Castro-Fields. These are the names that don't get headlines, but they're fighting for survival. The cornerback room is overcrowded. And not in a good way. In a there aren't enough roster spots for all of you kind of way. When you start stacking names, veterans, returning contributors, hybrid players, special teams contributors, you quickly realize something. This is a numbers game, and not everyone makes it through. Carson has already dealt with instability. Multiple coordinators in a short span, inconsistent development, and flashes that never quite turned into consistency. That's a dangerous combination when a new regime comes in looking for reliability. And Castro-Fields. He had opportunities. Real opportunities. But outside of one highlight interception that frankly felt more like a gift than elite playmaking, the overall performance just didn't hold up. Now both are staring at a brutal reality. Training camp isn't about improvement anymore. It's about survival. If they don't stand out immediately, they're gone. Let's shift gears to offense, because the pressure there might be even more unforgiving. Jonathan Mingo. This one stings. Because when Dallas made the move to bring him in, there was expectation. There was belief that maybe, just maybe, he could unlock something. That hasn't happened. Not even close. 6 catches. 14 games. That's not underwhelming. That's unacceptable for what was invested. And now, he's barely holding onto a roster spot. Wide receiver rooms in today's NFL are brutally competitive. You don't produce, you don't stay. It's that simple. And with the draft approaching, plus undrafted free agents ready to fight for a shot, Mingo's margin for error is basically gone. If Dallas adds even one receiver with upside, Mingo could slide from WR5 to WR6 to completely out of the picture. So here's the question you need to answer. Does Jonathan Mingo even make this roster? Be real about it. Because the tape hasn't been kind. Now defensively again, there's a name that might surprise you, Shamar James. Right now, he's sitting higher on the depth chart than he probably should be. And that's not a compliment. It's a warning sign about the current linebacker situation. If he enters the season as a top option, something has gone very wrong. He did his job last season. Nothing spectacular, nothing disastrous. But in the NFL, find doesn't secure roles, especially when roster upgrades are inevitable. And they are coming. Multiple linebackers will be added. That's not speculation, that's necessity. Which means James could go from being near the top to buried on the depth chart in a matter of days. Ironically, that might actually help him. Less pressure, more defined role, better matchups. But make no mistake, his current position is temporary. Now here's where things get really interesting. Marist Liufau. A position change. And in the NFL, that's never just a casual experiment. When a team moves you from your natural role to something else, especially from linebacker to edge, it usually means one thing. This is your last shot to prove you belong. The edge room is stacked. Established players, returning contributors, and almost certainly new draft additions. That creates a squeeze, and Liufau is right in the middle of it. The only thing working in his favor. Special teams. That relentless, high-motor style can carve out a role. Coaches value that. But is it enough to survive a numbers crunch at a premium position? That's far from guaranteed. Now pause for a second, because this is where I want your take. Question of the day. If the Cowboys draft a corner and a wide receiver early, which current player loses their job first? Don't just guess. Think about contracts, depth charts, and performance. Because that answer might reveal how this roster is about to change. Let's keep going. Luke Schoonmaker. This is the one fans have circled for a while. And honestly, it's hard to argue against it. The tight end class entering the league is deep. Ridiculously deep. Which puts even more pressure on players who haven't produced. Schoonmaker hasn't delivered the impact expected. Whether it's usage, development, or execution, the results just aren't there. Meanwhile, others on the roster have shown flashes, especially in blocking situations, which matters more than people realize in this system. If Dallas adds even a mid-round tight end, this becomes a direct competition. And if that new addition shows anything early, Schoonmaker could be in real trouble. Because in a deep positional market, potential gets replaced fast. Finally, we need to talk about a name that might surprise some people. Tyler Guyton. Right now, he's projected as a starter. But here's the uncomfortable truth about the NFL draft. It doesn't care about projections. If the board falls a certain way, if an elite offensive lineman is sitting there, Dallas might take him. And if that happens, someone has to give. The interior line feels secure. Other spots have financial commitments tied to them. That leaves one vulnerable point. Left tackle. And that puts Guyton directly in the spotlight. It's not about whether he's bad. It's about whether someone better becomes available. That's the reality of roster building at this level. So when you step back and look at the full picture, this isn't just a list of players under pressure. This is a roster on edge. A team balancing contracts, performance, potential, and draft capital, all at the same time. And once the draft begins, everything changes. Because for every new name called, there's an old name that suddenly becomes uncertain. And that's what makes this moment so dangerous and so fascinating for the Cowboys. Stay locked in, because what happens next could reshape this team faster than anyone expects.